The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystalline spires of the Centauri 9 diplomatic complex, where humanity's greatest hope for peace with the Vajri Empire hung in the balance. Raj Bennett checked his medical kit one final time, running through the inventory with practiced efficiency. As a human combat medic assigned to the Peace Conference's security detail, he knew that in a galaxy where war had raged for decades between humanity and the Vazari, this gathering represented something precious and fragile. The Vazari delegation had arrived 3 days prior, their ship descending like a storm cloud onto the landing platform. They moved with predatory grace, their scaled skin shifting in patterns that somehow conveyed emotions human translators still struggled to interpret. At their head walked Prince Vizoth, heir to the Vazari throne, his amber eyes cold as winter stars. Beside him, his sister, Princess Thalara, commanded equal attention, her bearing regal despite her youth. The conference hall buzzed with tension as representatives from both species attempted to navigate years of mistrust and bloodshed. Raj positioned himself near the medical station, watching the proceedings with the vigilance of someone who had seen too many diplomatic gatherings dissolve into violence. His earpiece crackled with routine security updates, the constant chatter of guards maintaining their perimeter. Thalara spoke with the authority of her bloodline, discussing terms with the human ambassadors. Her people valued strength above all else, viewing any sign of weakness as a fatal flaw. The Vazari abandoned their weak without question. It was tradition law survival. Raj had studied their culture extensively, knowing that understanding your enemy was crucial to survival. Today, however, they weren't supposed to be enemies. The first explosion shattered the morning calm like thunder splitting the sky. The conference hall's reinforced walls buckled as energy weapons discharged in coordinated strikes. Raj dove for cover as debris rained down his medical training, overriding his survival instincts as he scanned for injured. The beautiful morning had become a nightmare of smoke screams and the acrid smell of burned metal. In the chaos, Raj spotted a figure pinned beneath a fallen beam. Through the smoke, he recognized the distinctive scaled pattern of Princess Thalara's ceremonial armor. She was conscious, but clearly in agony, her left leg trapped at an unnatural angle. Around her, her Vazari guards retreated, following their prince's orders to evacuate. None looked back at their fallen princess. "She is injured," Raj heard one guard say in heavily accented English as he passed. "A burden now. The weak are abandoned." The words hit Raj like a physical blow. He had known about Vazari customs intellectually, but seeing them practiced so callously stirred something deep within him. As the last of the Vazari delegation disappeared through the emergency exits, Raj made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He crawled toward Thalara, ignoring the continued explosions outside. Her amber eyes met his wide with surprise when she realized he wasn't fleeing like the others. Blood trickled from a gash on her forehead, and her breathing was labored but steady. "Why?" she asked, the word carrying layers of confusion and something that might have been hope. "Why do you not abandon me?" Raj didn't answer immediately. Instead, he began assessing her injuries with professional detachment. The leg was definitely broken, possibly in multiple places. She'd need immediate medical attention to prevent permanent damage. "Because that's not who we are," he finally said, producing an emergency stimulant from his kit. "Hold still. This will help with the pain." The injection made her wince, but color returned to her face. As Raj worked, she studied him with those predatory eyes, trying to understand this human who defied everything she knew about survival. "The hall is compromised," Raj said, checking his scanner for safe exits. "Can you move if I support you?" Thalara's pride warred with her pain. In her culture, accepting help was a sign of weakness, but staying here meant certain death. I will try." Raj fashioned a makeshift splint from debris and his medical supplies, working quickly but carefully. The sounds of battle grew distant as the attackers moved to secure other areas of the complex. They had a window, but it wouldn't last long. "Trust me," Raj said, positioning himself to take her weight. Thalara hesitated for a heartbeat before allowing him to help her stand. The pain was evident on her face, but she didn't cry out. Her people might have abandoned her, but she wouldn't abandon their values of stoic endurance. They made their way through the ruined hall, Raj's arm supporting Thalara as she tried to minimize her weight on the injured leg. Each step was agony, but she persevered, drawing strength from the human's unwavering determination. The exit led into Centauri 9's vast wilderness. Thousands of square kilometers of deadly terrain that separated the diplomatic complex from the nearest settlement. The planet's dual suns hung in an alien sky, while the thick forests ahead seemed to pulse with their own malevolent life. The safe zones are beyond the violet forest, Raj said, consulting his navigation device. It's a 3-day walk under normal circumstances. Thalara looked at her splinted leg, then back at the human, who had already done more for her than her own people. With me injured, it might as well be a month. Then we'd better get started, Raj replied with a grim smile. They began their journey into the alien wilderness, leaving behind the smoking ruins of humanity's greatest diplomatic achievement. The path ahead wound through dense undergrowth where bioluminescent vines created patterns that hurt to look at directly. Strange creatures scuttled in the shadows, their forms defying any attempt at classification. As they walked, Thalara found herself studying her unlikely companion. Raj moved with practiced efficiency, constantly scanning their surroundings while adjusting his pace to match her limitations. His dark hair was disheveled from the explosion, and dirt streaked his face, but his movements remained calm and methodical. "You are military," she observed, noting how he unconsciously positioned himself between her and potential threats. "Was," Raj corrected. "Combat medic, 3rd Human Expeditionary Force. Saw enough of war to know its cost. Yet you still fight." "I fight for peace. There's a difference." The concept puzzled her. In Vazari culture, one fought for dominance, for honor, for survival. Fighting for peace seemed contradictory, like running toward stillness. They entered the violet forest, and the twin suns reached their zenith. The trees here were unlike anything in human space. Their bark had a crystalline quality that refracted light into spectrum displays, while their leaves whispered secrets in the constant wind. The very air seemed thick with possibility and danger. Thalara's leg throbbed with each step, but she refused to complain. Weakness was death among her people. Yet this human, who should have embodied everything the Vazari despised, showed a different kind of strength. He didn't abandon her when she slowed their pace. Instead, he found ways to make the journey easier, fashioning a walking stick from a flexible branch, identifying rest spots with natural windbreaks, even sharing his rations when she was too proud to admit her hunger. On the first night, they camped in a clearing where phosphorescent moss provided a gentle glow. Raj worked to improve her splint, while she watched, fascinated despite herself by his gentle competence. "Among my people," she said quietly, "this would make you weak, caring for an injured enemy." "You're not my enemy," Raj replied without looking up from his work. "And caring for others isn't weakness. It's what makes us civilized." The words stung not because they were cruel, but because they challenged everything she had been taught. The Vazari Empire had conquered half the galaxy through strength and ruthlessness. Their entire culture was built on the principle that the strong survived while the weak perished. Yet here was this human demonstrating a different kind of strength. The second day brought new challenges. They encountered a field of spore-releasing plants that left them both coughing and disoriented. Raj's knowledge of xenobiology proved invaluable as he guided them through the danger, using his scanner to identify safe paths between the deadly blooms. "How do you know so much about our worlds?" Thalara asked during a rest stop. "War requires understanding your enemy," Raj replied, "but peace requires understanding your neighbor." She was beginning to see the wisdom in that distinction. Her brother Vazoth had always focused on understanding weaknesses to exploit. This human seemed more interested in understanding strengths to appreciate. As they walked, Thalara found herself opening up to her unlikely companion. She spoke of her doubts about Vazari traditions, her frustrations with a system that valued physical prowess over all else. Raj listened without judgment, occasionally offering insights from his own experiences with war and peace. "I have a brother," she confided as they navigated a treacherous slope. "Prince Vazoth. He believes I am weak because I question our ways." "What do you think?" Raj asked. Thalara considered the question carefully. I think maybe weakness isn't what I thought it was." They were making better time than expected, Thalara adapting to her injury with characteristic Vazari determination. Raj's steadying presence gave her confidence she didn't know she possessed. Together, they had faced down predators, navigated toxic areas, and endured the planet's harsh conditions. On the third day, as they neared the safety zone, Raj's scanner picked up movement behind them. His expression darkened as he identified the signals. "Vazari soldiers," he said grimly. "A full squad moving fast." Thalara paled. "Vazoth," she whispered. "He must be ensuring I don't return to challenge his claim to the throne." They pushed harder, but their pursuers were uninjured and moved with military precision. By late afternoon, the sound of running feet behind them was undeniable. Raj made a decision, guiding them toward a narrow canyon that might provide defensive advantages. The canyon walls rose like fangs on either side, channeling their path toward a wider area dotted with stone formations. Here, Raj helped Thalara take cover behind a large boulder, his weapon already in hand. "Stay down," he instructed. "I'll hold them off." "No." Thalara grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "This is my fight." "You're injured." "I am still Vazari." The first soldiers appeared at the canyon mouth, their armor gleaming in the afternoon light. At their head strode a figure Thalara recognized, with a mixture of love and horror. Prince Vazoth himself, his expression carved from stone. "Sister," he called out, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. "You survive. How inconvenient." "Vazoth?" Thalara stepped from cover, leaning on her makeshift crutch but standing proud. "You orchestrated the attack. You planned this all along." "The peace talks were a weakness," Vazoth replied coldly. "Father grows soft in his age. The Vazari needs strength, not compromise. With you and the human delegation dead, war will be inevitable. And in war, I will prove myself the strong leader our people deserve." Raj moved to stand beside Thalara, his weapon trained on the prince. The other soldiers raised their weapons in response, creating a lethal standoff. "You would kill your own sister for power?" Raj asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. Vazoth laughed. "She is weak, injured, unable to lead. By our law, she is already dead." "By whose interpretation of our law?" Thalara demanded, her voice growing stronger. "Father still lives. The succession remains his to determine." "Father will not live forever," Vazoth snarled. "And when he falls, I will be ready to lead our people to the strength they deserve." The confrontation balanced on a knife's edge. Raj counted the enemies. 8 soldiers plus Vazoth. With Thalara injured, the odds were impossibly bad. But he had faced impossible odds before. "Stand down, Prince," Raj called out. "Leave, and we'll forget this encounter." "Weak," Vazoth spat. "Even now you seek to avoid conflict. This is why humanity will fall before Vazari might." He gave a sharp gesture to his troops. "Kill them both. Make it look like an accident." The soldiers moved with lethal precision, their weapons charging with distinctive whines. Raj had time for one shot before they overwhelmed him. He chose carefully, targeting the squad leader, buying precious seconds as confusion rippled through their ranks. But Thalara had her own plans. Drawing on reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed, she stood tall despite her injury. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of generations of Vazari royalty. "I am Princess Thalara Heir, by right of blood and strength," she declared. "By the ancient laws, I claim leadership of this squad." The soldiers hesitated. Vazari military tradition was complex, with deep roots in honor and hierarchy. Her claim had merit, especially with the Zoth not yet crowned emperor. "She is injured, weak," Vizoth shouted. Follow your future emperor. But not dead, Thalara countered, and still of royal blood. I have survived where others would have fallen. I have crossed deadly terrain while wounded. Is this not strength? Raj watched the standoff with growing hope. The princess was turning her brother's own weapons against him, using Vazari culture and law to her advantage. One of the older soldiers, a grizzled veteran with scars across his scaled face, lowered his weapon slightly. The princess speaks truth, he said slowly. She lives when she should be dead. She stands when she should have fallen. Traitor Vizoth raged, his own weapon swinging toward the soldier. That was his mistake. In threatening his own troops, Vizoth revealed the kind of leader he would be, one who ruled through fear rather than respect. The soldiers bred on traditions of honor and strength recognized the difference. The veteran stepped forward. I follow strength, my prince, but strength comes in many forms. Other soldiers began lowering their weapons. Not all. Vizoth still commanded loyalty from some of the squad, but enough to change the balance of power. Seeing his support crumbling, Vizoth made one last desperate gambit. You follow a cripple. A princess who needed a human to save her. This is your vision of strength. Thalara stepped forward. Each movement obviously painful, but filled with determination. I follow no human, she said clearly. He followed me. He chose to help because that is what the strong do. They protect those who cannot protect themselves. And in return, I learned from him. Strength without compassion is mere brutality. She turned to address all the soldiers. I have seen another way, a path where strength serves something greater than conquest, where power protects rather than destroys. The veteran soldier moved decisively, placing himself between the prince and princess. Others followed his lead. The tide had turned. Vizoth's face contorted with rage. You betray everything we are, everything our ancestors built. I build on what they created, Thalara replied, but I will not be bound by their mistakes. In the end, Vizoth had a choice. Fight his own troops in a battle he could not win, or retreat to plan another attempt at power. He chose retreat, but his parting words carried the weight of a promise. This is not over, sister. I will return with those who understand what the Vazari truly are. As Vizoth and his remaining loyalists disappeared into the canyon, the veteran soldier approached Thalara. Princess, we will escort you to safety. Thalara nodded graciously, then turned to Raj. And this human, he has proven himself our ally. The journey to the safe zone continued, but now with a full military escort. Raj found himself marching surrounded by Vazari soldiers. A surreal experience for a combat veteran who had spent years fighting them. During rest stops, he observed how Thalara interacted with her troops. She was different from the princess who had been trapped under debris days ago. Still proud, still royal, but tempered with something new. Wisdom born of struggle and dependence on others. You have changed her, the veteran soldier who introduced himself as Commander Thakur said to Raj during one such stop. She changed herself, Raj corrected. I just helped her see another perspective. Thakur nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps that is what our people need, another perspective. When they finally reached the safe zone, a combined human Vazari rescue station buzzed with activity. The attack on the peace conference had sent shockwaves through both governments. Thalara's survival and the story of her rescue became a symbol of hope amid the chaos. Doctors, both human and Vazari, attended to her injuries. The leg would heal, they confirmed, but the psychological impact of the journey would last much longer. She had been forced to question everything she believed about strength leadership and the nature of civilization itself. As Raj prepared to return to human space, Thalara requested a private meeting. She had been bathed and dressed in fresh robes, but the experience in the wilderness had left its mark. Her eyes held depths that hadn't been there before. I owe you my life, she began formally. You owe me nothing, Raj replied. You saved yourself. I just carried some of the weight. She smiled at that, a real smile that transformed her face. In my culture, there are no words for the kind of strength you showed. We have terms for physical prowess for dominance, in battle for the power to command. But what do you call the strength to carry another's burden? Humanity, Raj said simply. Thalara nodded slowly. Then perhaps the Vazari need to learn humanity. Weeks later, when the formal investigations were complete and diplomatic channels reopened, Princess Thalara made an announcement that shocked both civilizations. She claimed her right as heir to the throne, challenging her brother's attempts to seize power and declaring her intent to transform the Vazari Empire. Her first act was to establish new protocols for military conduct, protections for the injured, care for the weak, and a redefinition of strength that included compassion. Not all Vazari accepted these changes, but her survival and the loyalty of troops who had witnessed her leadership gave her claim legitimacy. The changes weren't immediate or easy. Generations of tradition don't vanish overnight. But Thalara proved that strength could be more than dominance, that leadership meant more than command, and that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from conquering others, but from transforming oneself. Raj watched these developments from afar, his own life returning to something approaching normal. He had been decorated for his actions, hailed as a bridge builder between species. But the greatest reward came months later, when the first joint human-Vazari humanitarian mission launched, a search and rescue operation designed to help any survivors of interplanetary conflicts regardless of species. Princess Thalara led the mission personally, her leg fully healed, but her perspective permanently altered. When their paths crossed again at the operations headquarters, she greeted Raj, not as a subject greets a savior, but as one leader acknowledges another. Ready for another walk? She asked with that same transformative smile. Raj grinned back. As long as you promise not to get trapped under any more debris. I'll try to keep my royal duties to a minimum, she laughed. Together they walked into the future, not as human and Vazari, not as strong and weak, but as allies who had learned that true strength lay not in what you could conquer, but in what you chose to protect. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, filled with beings who might need carrying across their own deadly terrain, and they would be ready. Behind them, the twin suns of Centauri 9 set in a blaze of color, painting the sky in shades of possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove that strength and compassion need not be enemies. But tonight, two species had taken their first real steps toward understanding that survival wasn't just about the fittest. It was about those willing to help others become fit enough to survive. The universe was harsh, unforgiving, and filled with those who would exploit weakness for their own gain. But it was also filled with beings like Raj and Thalara, who proved that sometimes the greatest strength was knowing when to carry others' burdens, even when, especially when, they couldn't carry your own. In the end, that was the lesson that echoed across both civilizations. Her kind had abandoned the weak, but humanity had carried a wounded alien princess across deadly terrain, and in doing so had shown them all a different path forward, a path where strength served compassion, where power protected the vulnerable, and where two species could learn from each other instead of simply trying to destroy one another. The story of that journey would be told for generations in both human and Vazari histories, not as a tale of conquest or domination, but as a reminder that sometimes the most important victories happen when we choose to help someone else stand even when we ourselves are struggling to remain upright. And Thalara, now empress of a transformed empire, never forgot the human who had shown her that true royalty wasn't about ruling over others. It was about lifting them up. Just as Raj never forgot the alien princess who had learned to see strength in vulnerability and leadership in service. Together they had rewritten what it meant to be strong. Together they had proven that the future belonged not to those who conquered, but to those who carried each other home.